Hey, Gwen.
Good morning.
Okay. So episode 134, I have some questions for you. First, let everyone know a little bit about you, and then I'm going to set up a hypothetical question for you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gwynne Fane, and I have been a fractional CMO for some time now. I actually started as a more junior marketer, and with time and experience over the years have grown into larger, bigger contracts.
All right. So here's our hypothetical. Today's day one of a 1-year engagement with you as fractional CMO, right? You got a client. It's going to be a year. Today's day one. Let's talk about what the first 3 months are likely to look like, right? What problems, what's 1 or 2 problems you normally find when you start with a new client, or what's the 1 or 2 things you try to get accomplished in that first 90 days?
Good question. I generally get contracts that fall into 2 categories.
Mm-hmm.
So one category is where a CEO has a specific problem that they need to solve, and someone with a track record for solving similar problems. So they're looking for someone they can trust so they can focus on other things. I call these kind of the no and goes. The other cohort I typically get is the CEO who has a problem with their existing operation and someone who's kind of in the early stages of startup. So either way, in the first 90 days, my approach is really the same. I start by generally doing a lot of listening. I do a bit of a discovery in the first 30 days. So really trying to understand, what are their marketing assets, challenges, and opportunities. And it includes auditing any marketing strategies they have that may have worked, may have failed. Their brand positioning, any customer insights I can glean, competitive analysis and performance of any of their marketing channels. And I try to meet with a lot of the stakeholders to really understand what their goals and expectations are. And then kind of in the 60 to 90 day mark, 30 to 60 day mark, I try to gain strategic alignment. So based on what I've learned, I develop a high level strategic plan where I define marketing priorities, outline key initiatives, and set goals. The aim here is to align the marketing strategy with the overall business objectives. And I also do focus on team integration. So depending on whether or not they have an existing team in place, I evaluate the existing skill sets that are there, identify any gaps, and establish the best way to really elevate their work. In terms of the last 30 days, so the 61 to 90 day period, this really involves transitioning the strategy into a plan. So prioritizing quick wins is important, identifying resource gaps and setting up necessary systems and processes to make sure that the marketing team is aligned and prepared to implement the strategy.
All right. And Maria, hi.
Hi.
So, Maria, tell folks a little bit about you, and then I want to talk about a similar hypothetical.
Sure. My name is Maria Botta, and my background, my first career was in film and television. I was a producer and an executive producer who transitioned into marketing management, really, after completing an MBA, a global MBA. And then I just started being a consultant. Really, that's principally how I started my career in the marketing side, and eventually grew into CMO engagements for startups. I work typically with startups and those early stage companies. So it's a very exciting space to be in, especially in the technology sector. I do often work with more traditional companies, but really my space is in the startup world.
Right. So in the startups, obviously there's a time crunch for everybody to ramp up, right? So in the first 30, 60, 90, what do you try to knock out fast and first?
Yeah. So, when you often are engaged as a fractional CMO, the personality play, especially in the sector that I work in, Again, the startup space is small. People often wear many hats. So it's really integrating with the team and also understanding the business. Sometimes these are businesses that are in new industry sectors that have never existed before. So that requires a lot of knowledge base, learning, getting up to speed. So it's really researching and understanding the business. Then, and the industry sector. Then for me, it's really aligning with the C-suite, the senior, professionals in the business, and really understanding what their objectives are as a business. When you're in the startup world, you kind of cross boundaries, right? So oftentimes, and when you come on as a fractional CMO, you will work very closely with operations to make sure that whatever we push through in marketing really is effectively delivered. And so it's really establishing those relationships, understanding those key parts of the business and how they work together, and how, a marketing push, an ambitious marketing push, might push the company to the limit, for example. This is also true not just for startups. The next thing that I like to do is really understand the business from an external stakeholder, internal stakeholder, and customer. And I divide that really very, very critically into three sections. The external, that could be vendors, it could be other people adjacent to the business. Internal, well, obviously we know what that means. That's, the internal employees, anybody affiliated internally, and then customer research. Now, in the startup world, I always like to say you should have a minimum of 100 customer interviews. So sometimes that exists, but aside, that's at the beginning of a business. So besides that, I like to implement key feedback loops on all three stakeholders right at the very beginning, because things are so dynamic in that kind of environment. Then I would say, there are many parts, many things that you have to do to really develop a strong strategy. But for me, it's really digging into any type of, research that they might have, any type of, if it's a VC-backed company, they obviously did a lot of research and, their market segment, all of that. So I really dig into that kind of work as well. So it's just to get like the 360 perspective of the business, right? And so then for me, it's developing a strategy that aligns really, like any other marketing person thinks of, that aligns to business objectives and that are obviously evaluated and deliverable, meaning you can deliver upon your set objectives. Sometimes, again, in the startup world, that becomes a little tricky because that might require hiring additional talent to bring into the company in order to deliver on some objectives, right? So it's also evaluating with HR and operations, again, working hand in hand. And then finally, it's deployment, right? It's like getting everybody internally aligned. Sometimes when you come in and there's no team, you have to build a team or use the internal resources that exist. You either bring in great tools that will help you deliver, plus humans. Thankfully, great tools are growing in acceptance and in sophistication. So in tandem with a small team, you can really make a big impact. So it's analyzing and evaluating the team internally, who can be brought on, if there's budget and there's availability to bring in talent and tools. And finally, it's getting it out there, really understanding how you're going to measure success. That's one of the first questions I ask CEOs is like, what is your measure of success in the next year? What does that look like? People who, businesses that might be involved with venture capital or private equity might be very different than publicly held companies or larger, more mature companies. So it's really understanding, okay, our objective is awareness because nobody knows this industry sector. I did that when I started off in financial technology and fintech. Nobody understood the sector. It was just starting out. So it's like, that was like, education and awareness. So it's just understanding those things really clearly and going out and getting it.
So let's imagine that Maria, let's imagine I'm the CEO, okay? And it's day one, and we're having our little talk. And I'm pretty frank about it, right? I said, like, you work with a lot more CEOs than I work with CMOs. I'm not going to be able to do everything, but if you tell me one thing that I should stop doing so that the company gets maximum benefit, what is that one thing that the CEO should stop doing?
The one thing that CEOs tend to do a lot of, both in established businesses and in the startup world, is thinking that they know all the answers to all the marketing, questions. And that is not the case. So let your professional team deliver and evaluate it together. So don't think you know the answers. Don't presume, don't assume. So that's the first thing, and have trust. And, trust is one of those things that's hard to build when you come in as a fractional. It's something that happens, either, obviously you get hired based on your reputation and your experience, but then the trust piece is really important. So telling the CEO that he or she needs to trust you on your recommendations. I mean, ask questions. I'm always like, ask me anything I'll answer. But
Gwynne, what do you think? What should a CEO start doing?
Listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of riff off of what Maria said. I think that I have encountered that a lot as well, where, everyone feels like a marketer. Everyone feels that they're a marketer. That's certainly, I've encountered that. I think that truly data is power. And so the way that I counteract that is by using data to gain the trust, because, it obviously, especially in new relationships, they're not, the CEO may not trust you initially. They may have a lot of questions. Can you do what you say you're going to do? And there certainly are a lot of marketers out there that are promising great things, and some deliver and some can't deliver. But I find that this is where data can break down those barriers between, doing, making the right decisions and getting trust quickly, which is, as Maria has already pointed out, something that you really need to have an effective working relationship.
Okay, so Gwynne, someone.
I was going to add to that. Data is just magic, right? But sometimes, and especially when you, again, start out as, you work in the startup world, data isn't available. Sometimes you got to do a little of this, and a little guesstimate and hypothetical situations and just imagine things. Right. But it's also about like telling a compelling story about what you can do. I think that's also part of it. And that's a convincing and sales job in a way.
Right. Let's see. Gwynne, I have a question. I'm still CEO. This is the last question where I'm still the CEO. Okay. Oh, turns out I'm about to get fired. I don't know it. So, as a CEO, I look at you and I say, hey, so like we've had some people working in marketing, like there's a marketing team, might only be one or two people, depending on size. But, there's been some supervision, there's been some management there. You're the first leadership level position we've had in marketing. I'm looking at this team now. I'm thinking about what they're going to look like 12 months from now when you cycle out. How's that team going to be better?
I think one of the things that a CMO brings is strategic leadership. So they provide the direction that might be missing often in the situations that Maria and myself encounter. So lack of overarching strategy. So that is in essence what we bring in. So expertise and experience. So often CMO will come in with a lot of experience from many different industries, and has tried things, has failed, has learned, has tried something else, has succeeded. All of that growth and learning. So the team will benefit from those learned experiences that we can share in a very short amount of time. It's also, they get a fresh perspective. It's not somebody in the organization already. It's somebody who's coming to the table with different viewpoints. And sometimes internal teams can become siloed or stuck in a particular way of thinking. So this is where an outsider's viewpoint and identifying new opportunities can have a significant impact. And I think also, especially for teams who have been struggling, and you'll hear this, I feel, from senior leaders in marketing, the team is struggling to get a seat at the leadership table because there isn't somebody there, and they need someone to hear their great ideas and bring them all together in a succinct way to help drive business strategy. This is something that they benefit from, because then you've got that senior leader, at the table, and communicating these ideas, and all of a sudden, things are happening, things are moving, and everybody's engaged.
Makes sense. Okay. Maria, I was going to ask you that same question, but I'm not going to. And here's why. You're a returning guest. You were here on episode 9. And this is episode 134. So it's like, that's one of the largest stretches between a guest coming back. It's the second largest stretch I think we've ever had. Here's my question instead, because you mentioned this earlier, and we're going to specifically around startups, right? When startups, bring on or start to focus on marketing, is there anything, a tool or a channel or just a mentality that's sort of underrated or overrated among startups right now? Like, do they all want to do X, even though, like, kind of, guys, there's no proof that you should be doing X? Or do they never want to do Y, even though Y would probably work for them?
It's interesting because it depends on the industry, I would say. So I'm currently working on a project where we can't use any digital marketing tools, because the project we're working on is installing fiber in rural communities that don't have any connectivity. So it's been a really interesting switch for me to think analog versus digital tools. I think sometimes we forget in marketing that face-to-face, or that there are tools that maybe seem from, an old historical perspective that, people don't really gravitate to, but are very effective. And so I would say sometimes you got to dust off those analog tools and tactics, and really think about, rethink things. The one thing I will say also is that email marketing, people think sometimes that's going to be like everybody reads it's effective and it's cost effective and it's not that expensive, and everybody thinks, oh, that's the silver bullet. But what people don't understand is, it's a number of different tactics working together. There is no silver bullet. Right. Nothing is going to solve X, make you gain 1 million followers, have 2 million downloads of your app. It is a consistent, and it involves a lot of different tactics and channels. I hope I answered your question.
Yes. So now I'm going to ask you guys a set of 2 questions. They're fill-in-the-blank questions. They're among my favorite because I have very little to do, and you guys have all the heavy lifting. So I appreciate that. So Maria, we'll start with you. First question. Just fill in the blank. Finish the sentence for me. Okay. Many clients just don't understand what?
That it takes consistency to achieve results. And it's hard work.
And Gwynne, what do you think? Many clients just don't understand, or your clients just don't understand?
Well, at the risk of parroting what Maria just said, the long-term nature of effective marketing, there is no silver bullet. It takes consistency. And often it doesn't come from one tool or channel, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Right. And then, all right, Gwynne, and then we'll go to Maria for the same scenario. I want to set up a different hypothetical for you, and I'm curious about your answer. So you've got 3 friends. They don't know each other. And they were all longtime, full-time corporate CMOs until last week. And they all ended up in some online group together, and they invited you to go to a coffee shop. And there's the three of them and you. They all last week became fractional CMOs. Okay, so they're brand new fractional CMOs. Right? How do you finish this sentence? A fractional CMO starting out today is going to be surprised by what?
I think that they will be surprised at the ability to work their network. I think network is everything. And for somebody just starting out, that's the place to start. And I think often this particular role lends itself so well to popping in and out of organizations that I think it's a lot easier to find work than they might realize.
Don't hear that question very much. That answer, I like that. And Maria, what do you think? A fractional CMO starting out today is going to be surprised by what?
Starting out today, well, moving from an institutional role, meaning you're embedded in a company, to a fractional position requires a lot more work in the upfront, because you've got to build that trust with your team, with your C-level. It's fast. It's really fast. It moves fast. You've got to move fast. You've got to be very agile. You've got to be on it. Even though you're fractional, you have to behave like you're, a full-time CMO. And especially in that initial engagement, in that initial stage of your engagement, you got to be on it. You got to become an expert, and you got to build that trust.
All right. Now,
fast.
The next question, I don't know what the next two questions are going to be. And here's why. This is season 6, coming up on about halfway through season 6 right now. And as you know, from the beginning of the podcast, Maria, as you know, guests are not curated, which is to say everyone picks their own time slot. And so you don't know, and mostly I don't know, who the other guest is going to be in the podcast, which means you end up sort of paired with another fractional CMO, but without any sort of relationship or knowledge of them. And I love that, because there's an energy to that wouldn't be the same if I had 2 people who specialized in fintech, or 2 people who specialize in B2B SaaS or oil and gas or healthcare or whatever, right? So lots of wide variety and experience in guests. So at this point in season 6, what we like to do is, Maria, you can ask Gwynne any question you want. Here's another fractional CMO. Here's a question. And then Gwynne's going to ask you a question. So what would you ask another fractional CMO that you've just been sort of like paired with randomly? What would you be curious about? Surprised you with that question, right? Maria, you kind of froze up.
Give me a second.
There we go. I'm hearing the odd word. I think you're back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know what the heck happened. I'm in New York, and it's just in the middle of Midtown. So it's whatever.
Sure.
Yes. A bird
So
flew
your
by.
question for the other fractional CMO you've been paired with is what?
Wow. That's a heavy lift there. I would be interested always in do you have any desire to connect with me as a fractional CMO and talk about, I belong to several fractional CMO groups. Do you belong to any? And, do you have like a sounding board group or anything, or friends or, colleagues that you talk about this unique role that we have?
I do belong to a fractional group. I find LinkedIn is a really good way to find groups to connect with, and some of them are run extraordinarily well, and have weekly meetings where you can, monthly meetings where you can ask questions and network and connect. And then and of course, I am very excited to connect with you after this, because I find that nobody can understand like somebody who's been doing this role. Nobody can understand the challenges and how you might have solved those in the past. So I think it would be an excellent sounding board. So absolutely, I would. The other thing that I find is, again, going back to the network is everything. And I have found particularly a lot of women in my position who have made the decision for one reason or another to leave the corporate world and become fractional, just because the nature of the work can be more conducive to family life. And so women who have been peers in my past whether they're still in the corporate world or they've become fractional, they also become a huge part of my sounding board and my network. And we have a bit of we call it supper club, to go out and discuss key issues from anything from, life, because we're all in similar stages, sandwich generation, aging parents, children, in careers, which is a part of how you show up at work, but also our clients as well. So absolutely, I think network is everything. And that's, it's taught me so much. So I appreciate you volunteering that.
All right. So 2 points. I don't normally interject here, but it's so topical. One, if either of you belongs or attends the fractional CMO knowledge share, which is going to happen like at the top of the hour, right after when we're recording this right now. This will unlikely be made into a clip. So I recommend it. If you do a search on LinkedIn or something for Alan Gonsenhauser, I think he runs that. It's part of the very, very large CMO Coffee Talk organization, but it's specifically for fractional. I'm attending. I'm not a fractional CMO. I attend about once a month because I'm sort of invited in as entertainment. And I'm just the entertainment. Different CMOs will give me either their LinkedIn page or and they're invited to, or their like company URL, and in real time I like fix the headlines and the about section and stuff for them, because I can do that sort of on the fly. So that's number one. And then I think number two is I'd be curious if any of you ever come across a stat about what percentage of fractional CMOs are women, because my company is about to have its 4th anniversary at the end of December. And from virtually day one, for the last 2 years or 2.5 years, it's been very fractional CMO centric. Most of my business comes because a fractional CMO has a client and brings me in to work on that part of the project. 73, I mean, it's almost immutable. 73%, sometimes it's 72, sometimes it's 74. 73% of my clients are female fractional CMOs. And I don't do anything to target like a gender or an age or anything, but that's just how it shakes out. And eventually it occurred to me, maybe 73% of fractional CMOs are female. And that's just, so that's why. But it's been 73% like the entire time. And I don't know why. Yeah, go ahead.
In my experience, I know very few female fractional CMOs.
Oh, I know lots of them. I'll introduce you. I mean, I know a lot of them. Okay.
Yeah,
so
and it's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Gwynne brought up a really interesting point that, a lot of women choose this fractional work for, family reasons, for personal reasons. I actually chose it because I am a digital nomad and travel the world. So I've just come back from traveling for 3 months, and it's really great to be able to do this work and not be stuck behind a desk or, embedded full-time in a business. And, and so for me, it's that freedom in a way. But it's funny. I would love to connect with more female fractionals, because I'm telling you, everybody I meet is a dude.
No, not me. Yeah. It's relatively rare for me to do any work for a male fractional CMO. Okay. So then, Gwynne, what's your question?
Well, I feel like Maria just answered my question. My question was going to be, would you ever consider going back to the corporate world? But as you just described, you're a digital nomad. But by with today's technology, who knows? Maybe you could be a digital nomad in a CMO role.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because one of my other passions that I'm very involved with is I'm a mentor and advisor to incubators and accelerators and venture capital firms, portfolio companies. And that's work that I'm really super passionate about. I mean, I love my work with my clients, but this is something that really, it just gets me every time. I love it. And so maybe if I was offered a position to be a CMO in an organization, like, a big um, accelerator organization, like I work with Techstars, I'm a Techstars global mentor. So an organization at that level, I would definitely think about it. I never say no to anything. I mean, that's just too finite.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So then, Maria, who should be contacting you these days, and how should they get to you?
Companies that are either going through a big shift in terms of, what they're focusing on in terms of marketing, companies that lack marketing leadership that need it for their next phase of growth, startup companies for sure, because that's,
Right.
again, as I mentioned, that's my kind of area where I like to be. And those people who are also maybe startups or companies from more diverse demographics. I work a lot with Black and brown founders through accelerators and these incubator spaces, and so I always love to be able to work with diverse populations. Companies that are represented that way. So those are the people, and they can reach me through my website, Maria Botta. That's MARIA as in boy, OTTA.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as Maria Botta MBA because there's actually a few other Maria Bottas. But those are the best ways to reach me.
Yeah. And Gwen, how about you? Who should be contacting you these days, ideally, and how?
Well, yeah, thanks. So I work generally with startups. I have a long history in fintech, wealth, and insurance. So I have a lot of expertise in marketing in that particular space, especially in with startups. But really, anyone who is looking for who has a growth issue that they're looking to solve, looking to investigate and to solve, and anyone who is looking to start up a team, operationalize a team, have somebody come in, build the structure, and then exit. That's really building things. Really excites me, and then operationalizing it, building an engaged team, and then exiting. So that's really where I tend to focus.
And how to get to you? Through LinkedIn?
Right. Through LinkedIn, yes. My link there is at the top.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, and Gwynne for the first time, and Maria for the second time, by
Thanks.
about 130 episodes separating. And the answers were great. I really appreciated them. And thanks for watching. You're probably watching this as a clip, and there are like 1,000 clips now, so you can just binge whatever you want. I'm not going to judge you. And so thanks, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks to the guests, and we'll see everyone next time.